Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are meeting from various locations, so I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all meeting today. For me, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present as early innovators and acknowledge their significant contributions to science and technology throughout land, water, and culture. So a quick admin from us, you are in listen-only mode. You can hear us, we can't hear you. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you tomorrow. The chat is open, so ask your questions as we go. We'll get to as many as we can. And if we have anything that we can't answer, we can always send a follow-up resource after today. So you are here today because you probably understand that the gap between adoption and real workforce outcomes is now the defining challenge for HR leaders and the executives who rely on them. Our 2026 HR industry benchmark research surveyed over 1,200 HR professionals across Australia and New Zealand, and the headline is 94% of HR professionals are using AI, but over half are only using it occasionally, and fewer than 1 in 5 can measure its impact extensively. And of those who expected AI to be transformative last year, less than half said it was. So the question for today isn't, are you using AI? It's, is it actually working? So we're going to cover 3 topics: the data behind the disconnect, why behavioural change can be the real bottleneck, and what's actually working and what isn't. So to kick off, we'll meet our speakers. First, we have Dr. Amantha Imber. Amantha is an organisational psychologist, founder of Inventium, Australian AI Consultant of the Year, host of Australia's #1 business podcast, How I Work, and her newest offshoot, How I AI. She's an expert in the behavioural science of how organisations actually adopt and embed AI at work, and we are thrilled to have her join us today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And then we have our own Anne Tosky. Anne is the Chief People Officer at ELMO. She has 20 plus years experience leading transformation across Salesforce, healthcare and financial services. And Anne and her team are ELMO's Customer Zero for AI-powered workforce changes, trying to turn our AI ambition into practical outcomes. So thank you for taking the time out today, Anne.
Thank you. Excited to be with you both.
So let's get into it. Let's start with you, Anne. The HRIB, which is our shorthand for the report, reveals 3 persistent gaps: readiness versus effectiveness, leadership expectations versus HR reality, and adoption versus impact. And you're living this right now in an organisation that's actively trying to close those gaps. So which one is hitting closest to home to you right now?
It's such a good question. I'm laughing a little bit too, because I think if there's any other kind of HR folks on the line, particularly those with broad generalist roles, your business partnering, your heads of, etc., you might be like me and just you're like, where is the time going? Time is flying. I set out to do ABC today, and instead I'm doing XYZ. It's out the door. Fire drill, fire drill. So I think for me, that is the reality. And then you're trying to both adopt AI yourself, role model it, and then kind of get the organization ready for the future. All the while, I think the thing that resonates for me in that is kind of the leadership expectation and the kind of HR reality. There's like, okay, Ann Tosky, where are the productivity gains? What are you learning about AI? Who's adopting it? What's going on? And you're like, okay, calm down. Like I've just dealt with this major thing over here, and this is yet another thing. So that's kind of the reality I'm seeing as we work through it here.
Absolutely. And I think maybe like leading on to that leadership question, Amantha, we saw around a third of ANZ HR leaders expected AI to be transformative last year, but fewer than 1 in 5 said it was. So from your perspective, is that an expectation problem, an execution problem, or do you think something else entirely?
I think there are so many problems. I think one really big problem, when I think about the HR people that we work with at Inventium AI, they're often coming to us because they're doing an AI rollout and people have got licenses and they're like, okay, we need to uplift AI capability. But it's one thing uplifting AI capability, and it's another actually teaching people, how do you reconstruct a workflow Like, how do you even identify what are the workflows? What are the things that you do every day or every week? And then how can AI play a role in that? So it's kind of so we see that it's two part. It's literacy, which, you know, I see a lot of HR folk leading, but then leverage is the forgotten piece where they're kind of going, here's how to prompt, but we're not actually going to take the next step and go, how do you reinvent your workflows using AI and, of course, human?
Yeah, I can see like Han and I just both nodding along. I just know even the word workflow, like to me, I'm like, what does that mean for like me? Like what is a typical workflow for me? Like how am I trying to get like AI to like improve? And I've gotten great at prompting, but like yeah, and the execution of it is good, but yeah, where's the next step? How do I like uplift it? Um is there anything you could say, Amantha, that like would help people, I guess, identify like when you say workflow, like, oh, what am I actually thinking?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like I can give examples of my workflows. One, one that I actually wrote about this morning in my newsletter is a workflow that I've set up in Claude Cowork that is my daily AI briefing. So given I run a consultancy that does AI capability building, I need to know the latest news, but I need to know specific things. Like I don't need to know like what are really small incremental features that Microsoft has released overnight in Copilot. But I do need to know, like, what are the big trends going on? What are the big shifts in the industry? What are the things through the lens that I look at AI through, which is obviously AI and AI for knowledge workers, but also the psychological and the behavioral and the cultural impacts of that. So I've got quite a long and specific prompt that I have scheduled to run at 8 a.m. every morning. Claude will do that in the background. I can then pop in at any time into my Claude desktop app and I can read it. I can then go deeper into the sources. I can ask questions of that briefing. And so, that workflow previously was really messy for me. Like I subscribe to a lot of AI newsletters. They're, often the things that just sit in my inbox collecting dust and, causing guilt. Oh, I need to read that and I feel guilty that I'm not on top of everything. But now that workflow has been automated and I can just dip in at some point in the day. So that is just one example of probably 100 workflows that I have integrated AI into in my life.
Yeah, I love that. And Anne, would you have an example? I might not put you on the spot here because I'm not sure I
No.
asked you this beforehand.
No, actually, this is really resonating with me. So right now, this is like a mega workflow. There'll be thousands in here, I can imagine. But we're and any other HR folks that are on the same kind of Australian end of financial year path, we're headed into that favorite time of year, year-end performance ratings to to compensation to bonus planning. And so I'm thinking about it, process workflow perspective of like, what's the process and where can we workflow streamline, agentify, automate to try to make things easier? So it's kind of, I'm not there yet in terms of something built. I've got some good ones running for my, kind of daily practice, but I'm thinking about it that way. And that might be way too ambitious because it's also my first time running it for ELMO. So wish me luck. But I'm really trying to think about it that way because it's here, it's now. Let's use it. Let's have impact. It's such a big thing in the HR world. It's our biggest show of the year of like running this big process. So yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. And I think, I guess, to think about like those sort of really big like pieces of work. And I know, Anne, your team and you are charged with AI like adoption and impact in Elmo. One of the things that surprised us about the data is that business leaders are actually rating HR's performance more positively than HR themselves. And even when I hear you talk, I know you're like, what more could we be doing or how are we doing it? Like, and it's interesting that perhaps yourself and maybe other HR leaders in the room today might be feeling like they're not doing enough, whereas actually business, like commercial senior business leaders are feeling different. And only 1 in 4 HR leaders feel fully equipped to deliver that AI transformation. So there's a real, I guess, gray zone between the accountability, like HR feels accountable for AI impact, and then the responsibility of it. Maybe only 12%. I think it's only 12% say they're responsible for it. Amantha, maybe you could speak first to like what that gap might be.
Like I obviously read that in the report and I thought, I don't know what's going on there. Like, is it just is it imposter syndrome? Is it like people are just not having a good read on what they actually have achieved, or is it something else entirely? So, I mean, Anne, like I would love to hear your perspective on this because like you are in there being a CPO, like on the ground.
Mm. Yeah, it is interesting. So I reflect on it and I think there could be a few things going on. One is like this is actually a change management challenge, really, at the end of the day, maybe. Um, got to bring people, why do I need to do this? What's the burning platform? What's in it for me? Win the hearts and minds, champions, role model, reward, test and learn and fail, communicate, 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 measure, all those things. So it is a potentially we might be thinking about this thing like I've never done this before and no one's quite done it before and oh my God, that's overwhelming and I don't feel equipped. But if we break it down and think that's what I'm trying to hang on to is like, okay, I can do some change management. I can do this if I approach in this way. It might be different and it may not always work properly. So there's a bit of that. But then I think you're right too on the imposter syndrome thing. I think I've been reflecting on the function of HR. It's been in its way largely 20 years, some way, shape, or form. Um, and it has very broad expectations that continue to pile on psychological safety, um, physical safety, pay people correctly, pay people on time. So there's also a bit of like, how can I be expected to do all these things at the same time and do them well? And then I've got this extra thing. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I'm really interested in others' perspectives here because yeah, it's an interesting challenge. As the lights perfectly go out, perfect timing.
Quick move around, get the sense
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
And you know what, Anne, like what that kind of triggered for me is like what are the metrics that you're using to assess your performance? Because I see a lot of vanity metrics.
Mm.
When we first start working, with various clients that we work with at Inventium, we ask them like, how are you like what sort of shift are you trying to achieve with your AI transformation? And what I find is that if there are metrics in place, and a lot of the time there are no metrics, that's obviously problematic. But assuming that there are metrics, they're often usage based. So, how often are people using the AI tool of choice, such as Copilot, for example? And sometimes they are also what percentage of people have been through training. And I think that like usage metrics are so problematic. Like I was reading an article the other day that talked about how Meta essentially have like a bit of a leaderboard for token usage. So depending on how AI literate you are, like tokens are essentially the thing that tell you how much input and output you're getting from your AI. And so, your token use might be several thousand, several hundred thousand, several million, per day, depending on how you're using AI. And what is really problematic about that is that it just means that people are using the tool. It doesn't actually tell you that they're doing it well. And what we're finding at a lot of organizations that haven't built AI literacy properly is that yes, people are using the tools more, but they're producing more AI slop or work slop, depending on the terminology there. And that is going to lead to a productivity decline because if you have people producing a greater volume of work, and producing volume of work is now really easy as opposed to 3 years ago, where volume generally equaled quality and generally equaled better worker. Volume now has no correlation with quality in the world of AI. And so if people are using it more, they're producing more stuff. I just don't know. And I wouldn't know, like, if I was the CPO, does that mean we're getting better or worse, like in terms of productivity uplifts that we've been promised from AI?
God, it's so resonating. Like I'm nodding like a little nodding cat on a dashboard over here. Like it's so resonant with me. Yes, I had a conversation with a colleague the other day just about like, hey, like I think we're going to see a new world of performance feedback cases of, hey, my friend, you used AI for this. It's very clear. You haven't read it. Let's coach you on that. So that's like a new emerging fun people in leadership coaching thing coming our way. But yeah, definitely. I think metrics, we are kind of in a place of like very nascent thinking about metrics, and totally agree with your point. In looking at usage, uh, it's very misleading because we were looking at our leaderboard of some top users, and exactly that. It could be that these people, it's really great usage, but it's just quantity and not quality. And it could also be uh, or it could be quality, like we just don't know.
Mm.
And the tick box of like training butts and seats or eyes on keyboard, agree with you as well. I'm For me, the most interesting thing is that I'm curious about. I know it's not a metric and I'm not a hard like numbers person, but like, what are we learning about this? We expect it to free up time. Is it? What are we using with that freed up time? We're thinking it's going to higher value add. Is it? And so that for me is just more fascinating. I probably at some stage someone will be like, I need better metrics, and keen to get your perspective, Amantha, on what those should be. But yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, and I reckon, and with what you're saying about what are we doing with that freed up time, HR needs to be stepping into that role, and I'm not seeing that enough because the assumption, and certainly like when we've done our own research at Inventium, we found that what are people doing with the time? They are surprise, surprise, they're doing more work. Is that good for culture? Is that good for well-being and burnout? Probably not. And what is happening with that time is that it's been spent on more cognitively intense tasks because it stands to reason that you're delegating to AI to do the more monotonous, repetitive tasks. That's obviously some really good use cases for AI. And therefore, you're essentially doing more deep, focused work. And we know from research it's really hard to do more than 2 to 4 hours of deep focused work. But if we're not being given guidance on what to do with all these supposed time savings, that's generally what's happening. But what if HR leaders stepped in and said, okay, the plan for the time that you are saving every day, every week is to invest that back in learning, or we're going to redesign your job, or that time is going to be spent innovating and working out how can we improve like what we're doing for our customers, whether that be internal customers in HR or as an organization, all the people's roles. Can we focus on that? Or maybe people could just leave at 5 p.m. every day, you know.
I'm getting goosebumps as you talk
I
about it,
know.
because it's like that cognitive, like I've been thinking about that a lot, and actually had a chat with Justin and the team about this a while back of the work is changing, isn't it? Like the
Mm,
gear switching is faster and faster. You now have this co-pilot, this agent, this chat that's helping you do more and more and more. You're getting more tired. And sort of what you're saying to me, even being able to communicate that out of like, think about this, employees, people's leaders, like your cognitive load is higher and heavier.
mm.
Exactly to your point of like, let's think about and let's be deliberate on what we spend with our energy and time instead. I love it. So helpful.
I want to take a little because it's interesting. I know obviously ELMO has really embedded AI into our organization, and Amantha, you obviously work with organizations that have tried to adopt and embedding AI into their organization. But there is actually like a fairly there's two things. There's sort of almost two questions here. There's a couple of top barriers of like why people are being held back from adoption. But then there's also like people who are using it only occasionally and only in small pockets of organizations. So you might have like leaders using it really intensively, but like then further down, like maybe not as much. The top barriers, according to our survey, to the report, is that there's a lack of skilled people, a lack of expert guidance, and a lack of time to experiment. So I guess like Amantha, for you, what strikes you about that? Like, what do you think? Um, like, how can like I guess like HR leaders overcome those barriers, so to speak?
Yeah, and look, they absolutely resonate. Like when we start working with an organization, we're really interested. One of the first questions I ask is, what's the AI proficiency like of your ELT? And almost always it will be very mixed. There will generally be a couple of very early adopters who are deep in experimentation. There will generally be a couple of execs that have barely touched any AI tool, and then everyone else will, it'll be a normal distribution curve. And I just think like, if I was working in that organization and that was my ELT, I would be very confused as to what I should be doing. Like we hear stories where AI, use isn't celebrated or isn't the norm or isn't, properly kind of integrated. I hear so many stories, and this comes from like executive team members down, where they'll be using AI for something, and then they'll just alt tab out of AI when someone walks behind them because they can see their computer screen, as if that's cheating. And even now, like that is still very much the culture in a lot of organizations that we start working with. So look, like my point, or like the main point that I'm trying to make, is start with the ELT. If they are not understanding how to use this incredibly powerful tool, and they are your organization's highest paid people, so their return on investment per hour of their time is going to be greatest if they can unlock the powers of Gen AI, then start there. It is such a no-brainer, and then go more broad.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love what you're saying, Amantha, because this is like, maybe I'm grasping at the change management analogy too much, but it's like start at the top, isn't it? Like it's
Mm.
role model and make it safe. I love that. You're giving me
Mm.
sparks of ideas too, what I should be doing with our leadership team here.
And I think as well, like when we first start using AI really extensively in your work, there is an element of like, well, what's me doing this work versus, what the AI is doing. And then there's a bit of and, obviously the fear of like job replacement. I think we would be remiss not to mention the fact that like jobs being replaced is in the media. It's being framed like that in some of these bigger organizations that are making mass redundancies. So if ELT can create that sort of safe space where they're saying we're using it and also we see it as this, like this is why we're using it, and it's not to take jobs. It's like it's creating that psychological safety, as you said, Anne, before. We want to like having clear goals as to what like the AI is intended for, which also circles back to the metrics, It's so everyone can leave at 5, or it's so everyone can do XYZ, or we have this big, strategic outcome. We actually ran an Educate Day or an AI Educate Day last year, and it had a really high ENPS internally. And that was about leadership openly, leadership talking about openly using AI models. And were these deliberate behavioral interventions, do you think? Did you have to like sort of, I guess, like back into them?
No, definitely. I think it's again part of the necessary journey of, I think, and I loved how you divided it up, Amantha. I think you talked about like, I'm listing the term, but there was like literacy versus
Leverage.
leverage. Yes. So
Mm.
like that literacy piece, I think it's something that just has to be done. It also kind of nice gives me my HR heart like a nice warm feeling because it's also culture building, isn't it? Of like we come together, we do this, it's fun, it's a good experience, it's a reason to come and connect as human beings. So yeah, quite important. I think and I think there's also like just with the way that it's such a I think there you can almost like not do enough. There's a point of like not wanting to distract the business, but it's not like you do it once and done. It's like, okay, now I know how to use chat, or now I know how to build an agent, but now I want to learn, to think about linking things together. I want to think about like this piece of work differently. And there's a social element to that as well. So yeah, it's definitely a key part of the strategy for sure, I think.
Absolutely. I am just going to, sorry, I've like lost my train in my script. I wanted to, I guess, maybe talk a little bit about, we're talking a lot about like what's, I guess, not working. Amantha, across organizations that you work with and observe, what is separating the ones that are building real momentum from the ones that like perhaps are stalling or not starting, I guess?
Mm. So let's assume that we've got AI literacy in place, and let's just assume that because you just need that first. So then I would say, the organizations that we're working with that are more advanced, we're getting more into how do we really leverage AI? How do we break down the different workflows that you have, and how do we get a bit creative about it? Like, for example, we're working with one of the big banks at the moment with their regional leadership team, and I think one of the things, like if you're someone that has direct reports, something that is going to, improve their performance and also improve your experience and your impact as a leader is the quality of work that you're getting. And so, like with this particular group, what we took them through, we basically built out a GPT that we called the Quality Compass that interviewed the leader about what are your preferences in terms of like, what do you look for in a piece of work, say a report that you're receiving from one of your direct reports. What are the qualities that you're looking for? What's the ideal length? What's the tone? What are some of the other things that, creates like that makes something good quality work as distinct from not good quality work. And then through that process, every leader was able to develop their own personalized GPT or agent, depending, which AI platform language we're talking about, and then give that GPT slash agent to all of their direct reports and say, whenever before, like you give me any of your work to review, run it through this quality compass. It's going to give you some feedback. I then need you to apply that feedback. And then these leaders are now reporting getting significantly higher quality work. So that's just like one of many practical examples where we're going, okay, we know what the tool does. We know like how to use it. But how do we then think creatively around what is going to help us be more impactful as leaders and as a team? And that's just like one example just from, a couple of weeks ago that's fresh on my mind, that is really, really making a difference in a very tangible way to these people's lives.
Oh my
I can
gosh,
see
it's
Anne and I
so,
are both like,
yeah, because it's
seriously.
like, it's even just, I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about like teaming, moving through the teaming part,
Mm,
norming, storming, performing. I'm getting all the things wrong, but
mhm,
like, you could do that, couldn't you? Be like,
mm,
this is who I am, this is what I'm
mhm,
looking for, this is important to me. And then the
mhm,
team can learn from that and feel kind of
mm,
empowered then of like, these are the guardrails. Wow, that's got a lot of
mm.
impact. I like that.
And look, one thing I would absolutely recommend, which for us is kind of like in the AI literacy piece, but I just don't think that this is included in a lot of ways that companies approach AI training is context matters more than prompting. So, like if you've been in the AI world and you've consumed, stuff, you probably know that, prompt engineering was very 2024, 2025 was more sort of moving on to context engineering, and that the output that you're getting from your AI tool of choice is going to be infinitely better with the more context it has about you. And so, again, one of the things that we work with our clients on is creating briefing documents. So, at its most basic, a briefing document is a document, a sort of a 7 to 10 page Word document, let's say, that knows all about you, and like your preferences, your needs, your role in the organization, and so forth. And so, and I will say, like, just hit me up on LinkedIn if you want a basic prompt to, create that. That's, really easy to do. It is like 15 minutes of time, incredibly well spent. Like, literally just go out and have a coffee with your AI and create a briefing document. But then if you want to take that to the next level, then my advice is to think about either the different roles or hats that you wear at work and the different projects that you're working on, because every one of those deserves a different briefing document. So, for example, in my work life, I wear a few different hats. I wear a leadership CEO hat, running a business hat. I wear a product development hat. I wear a podcast host hat. I'm about to release my 5th book, so I wear a book writing hat for that specific book project. And each of these projects have a specific briefing document so that when I open, let's say at a basic level, like a new thread in Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever, I will upload that briefing document. So immediately the AI is on the same page as me. It knows my world. It knows the context that we're talking about. And whatever I'm working on it with is going to be so much better.
This is so cool. This time is just paid for itself. I'm absolutely doing this. I love it because you're so right. Even I mean, this is such a silly example, but back like I'm thinking about the holiday time of asking ChatGPT, like, what is my elf name? It's like, well, you're this and this and that. But if I
Mm,
briefed it, gave it even more context, and of course in a work setting,
mm,
this is amazing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love it.
It is really amazing. And I was also a little bit, I mean, I should have been using AI to be like, how do I make sure that the chat is turned on in my webinar? It was not. Everyone has now informed me that I disabled it. I've now re-established it and it is and it's up and working. I just wanted to address James's comment though in the Q&A. I'll just read it out. As a leader in the people team, one of the things I've used to help leaders manage workload is balancing the run the business versus change the business. This flexes up and down depending on the transformational load, seasonality, etc. Here's the challenge. AI started as a change the business initiative, helping us solve and accelerate transformational change. However, AI's best use cases are when we automate workflow as much as possible. Sorry, automate workflow as much as run the business activity as possible. So people now feel like they are now in 100% change the business world. There's no end in sight. We're now in a state of perpetual transformation, and that's scaring people. The speed of change will never be slower than it is in this very moment. Thoughts? That's a hard one. You're welcome, guys. I mean, like maybe James, you could like comment now in the chat so we could, I mean, in the chat feature if you wanted to expand on that. But is what I'm hearing here that because AI keeps changing and keeps like being asked to be more in the business and more in the everyday, you're just constantly trying to like improve and like do the next thing as opposed to just running the BAU of a business. And so everyone is always feeling like they're a little bit behind because they constantly kind of keep up with change. You're gonna have to answer
Yeah.
in live.
It actually does resonate with me though, because it's making me think of like, why am I so tired? Is it the function? Is it me? But you're right. Like it's sort of an interesting mental model of like there is run the business and there is change the business, and there's a certain amount of perspective of our roles that have always been that way. But then if you're approaching everything to do with AI as change the business, that'll be really exhausting. And like, where's the finish line? Versus you still do need to run the business. So yeah, it's resonating with me. And I think the previous comment as well from Mez too, of just that burnout in the HR team is real. So I think we need to think about how we look after ourselves and each other in this time, because that kind of cognitive load, and no matter which way you kind of mental model this, is kind of there. And it's also kind of unprecedented. I think that's the other thing is like we don't know how this is going to look in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Is it going to be what we think it is, or is it going to be completely different? I mean, that's going to be fascinating, I think.
Yes, that will be like I think that's like the very it's having real technical trying to turn the light back on. I want to
AI is obviously not involved in your lighting,
No, no, that's right. Exactly.
just turning it around. I was gonna well, I mean, Amantha, did you want to add to that before I move on to I was gonna ask.
Um, yeah. I mean, look, that's I feel like there's a lot of things in James's comment and question. I'm kind of not quite sure where to start, other than I mean, like AI can definitely time save, but it can also produce better quality thinking as well. I think that's sort of the other part of Gen AI that doesn't get, it's all about the time saving benefits. Of course, there are lots, but it's also about our ability to augment what we're doing and get a better quality result, which is sort of lesser talked about because it's harder to measure and is generally not being measured. And just like picking up on what Anne was saying, in terms of the burnout, there's some great research published in HBR by a group of researchers from BCG that looked at just the cognitive load that is happening when we're working with AI. We are context switching a lot more. Like typically if we're working with the AI to get a task done, then, we're potentially working with it to get a second and third task done at the same time, depending on which thinking model you're using, and therefore how much time the AI is taking to process your request. And they've termed it brain fry, which I love. It was Gabriella Rosen-Kellerman, who actually interviewed a couple of days ago for the How I Work podcast, coming out, I think, in about 4 weeks. And so she was leading this research, and it's interesting because brain fry is, if you think about it as cognitive exhaustion that is coming from just managing so many AI agents. And I don't mean agentic AI, I mean like an agent as in like a chat with Copilot in terms of this research. It is really, really exhausting. It is different from burnout. Again, like just hit me up on LinkedIn and I can send you, a direct link to the article. But it's something to really keep an eye on in terms of what you're measuring, because burnout doesn't necessarily capture it. This is cognitive exhaustion specifically.
How it's you've just hit the nail. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? The research always says, like, do not try to multitask. You will, like,
Mm,
not the way to go. You think it's a false gain, but
mm.
you're waiting for the thing to run on your, in my case,
Yes.
not so well written prompt. And I might as well do this over here. And then now I'm multitasking. Psh,
Mm,
yeah, stop
yeah,
it.
yeah. And interestingly, the more complex the task is, like for example, if you like Claude's my AI of choice, but I'm across them all because I have to be for work. But like if I'm running something in Claude Cowork and I'm bringing in skills to help me, and I'm generally sort of working on relatively complex tasks with the AI, its processing time takes more. So it might take like 60 seconds while I'm waiting for Claude to execute what I'm working with it to do. And it's like, I don't want to be twiddling my thumbs for 60 seconds. So my next instinct is to go, well, I'm going to work with another task on, Claude in this new thread and, rinse and repeat throughout the day. And you can see why like we are cognitively like burnt by the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like the big takeaway for me from this conversation for sure is like maybe just take that 60 seconds to like get up and walk around or get some
Yes.
water.
100%.
Have
Yes.
a break from the
Like
computer.
breaks are so important. And you say that almost flippantly, Anne, but like when I was speaking to Gabriella about her research, I'm like, what do you do to avoid brain fry? And she's like, you've got to prioritize breaks and you've got to prioritize but like being switched off from the digital
Anything.
world. Like
Yeah.
just like we talk about taking breaks from social media or email or whatever, AI usage is the same thing, is doing the same thing to our brain, even though it's, hopefully adding more value than social media.
I love it.
I wanted to touch a little bit on like we're talking a lot about the value and maybe and also I guess like probably the bigger question, one that I don't think we're ready to unpack in this particular webinar is like the quality of what we get out of our webinar, sorry, out of AI. But also like the frustrations that we're feeling that people are feeling from AI. What we found in the research is that the top frustrations are privacy concerns, a lack of integration with existing systems, and then excessive rework. So Amantha, what's your experience, I guess, with those three things? Like, is that something that HR leaders how can they address those
Um, Look,
in
I'll speak to rework, but I reckon Anne will probably have a very good view on the other things. Look, rework happens when you are lacking AI literacy and you start working with AI, and let's say you start with a substandard prompt and it therefore gives you substandard output, and then you start arguing with the AI like, no, 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 more like that. Sound like it's like a robot. Don't use the word delve or whatever. And then it like tries to rework, and then you're like, no, not like that, like that. And then the more you argue with AI, not a good like there's good ways to argue with the AI, but that's a bad way. The worse the quality is becoming. Like if you start with a really solid prompt or work with AI to help you construct that prompt, kind of meta prompting, if you like, then you are going to get to a far superior outcome. So even just like on a micro basis, I see that happening so much with people that haven't been taught properly how to get the best out of AI.
yeah. Prompting was like for me used to be like two sentences, like help me do this. And now some of my prompts are longer than the thing I actually need.
Mm.
Yeah. And do you want to speak to the privacy concerns and potentially that lack of integration as well?
Yeah, the lack of integration resonates with me because I think that in a lot of the work that I do, for example, I'm going out and we're, I think, quite fortunate in our case in Elmo in that we've decided like, Glean is our AI of choice for work. So that from a privacy perspective, it hasn't really come up so much of a worry. But lack of integration, yes. So where we're, switching Okay, I'm going to go right. I'm going to see how many open job recs there are. I'm going to figure out where this one's at. I'm going to write something to send to the manager. I'm going to check the quality of the PD. You're kind of going in and out. You're going in and out. And so versus a feed. So having something that runs across it all, super powerful and kind of like not there yet. I think some of the stuff in our own product, we're getting there of like AI more embedded in the flow of work so that you're not like out and back in. But I can definitely feel that of like you're sort of, yeah, I'm curious to you as well, Amantha, but it's like doing this work. I was working on something today, like a communication, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to draft it in Google Doc. Maybe that's even wrong, but like I just kind of want to get my own piece and I'm going to run it through my Glean kind of choice and I'm going to come back and then I'm going to edit again and then finesse. So yeah, it's leading to more context switching potentially
Mm,
versus being in the flow of work. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. Monotask wherever possible.
Yes, that's my that's my big takeaway. Literacy, leverage, monotask, and build some context agents for the team. Yeah. Yeah.
I see a question from Lisa, which I think we kind of have already addressed, but maybe we can just sort of like, I guess, it sort of speaks to a little bit like the leadership piece before, but also um, a little bit about this next point I wanted to talk about. So the stat from the HROB is only 6% of sorry, sorry, I have a bit of a cold. Only 6% of organizations have more than 3/4 of their workforce using approved AI tools, which is quite small, I would think. And Lisa has asked, how much of AI change is bottom up versus top down, and how does that relate to organization AI maturity? And I guess I'm like conflating that to say, well, organizational AI maturity would mean like maybe most people are using AI. So that's my kind of connection with those two pieces. Amantha, would you like
Mm.
to speak to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do kind of come back to what are your metrics for success? And most organizations don't have them. Or again, they're just going on, okay, are people using Copilot every day? Or are they using it for several hours per day? Like, what does that look like? And again, those metrics are just vanity metrics. So, I always think metrics like just being really clear on what is the shift you are trying to achieve, like what is the behavior shift, because this is not like a technology transformation. This is a human transformation. So if you can start with metrics, and as basic as that sounds, my experience from I don't know, probably spoken with hundreds of HR leaders by this point, is that those metrics often don't exist, or they're very basic usage metrics, which are just vanity metrics.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of I think the problem as well is that like when everyone's using AI and everyone feels like they have to start using AI, that no one takes that second to be like, why? Why
Mm,
are we using it? And then yeah,
mm.
establishing that success model. So I feel like that's really powerful. And did you want to add anything to that before I?
Yeah, I think it really resonated with me. I think I'm thinking about it a lot because we're, back to my change leadership management analogy. Of course, we're going to be doing stuff, orchestrating from the top down, but critically important is the bottom up, because I was listening to some other peers talk about this, and there's sort of the measure of like, are you using AI at work or not? And there's a fear, there used to be a fear of saying that you're using it. Not maybe now you feel like you have to say you use it, or maybe it's the opposite. You don't want to be caught using it. So sort of, yeah, the measurement may not be entirely right, but I think it's again back to the learning. Like what's the grassroots kind of saying? What are they seeing? What are they thinking? And sharing it, because that gives you kind of that social safety of like, well, wait a minute, you talked about using it in this way. Let me learn from you. I think that's really powerful and important. And I think, but yeah, what you're saying too, Amantha, definitely around this is really resonating with me. What are you trying to achieve? Is it because I think there's particularly with what you read in the media of organizations like, oh, we're shedding these roles because of AI. There's a fear of like the purpose is like the dark, evil purpose of job loss, and that's I don't think that's what we want to do at all. It's about like learning exactly what you're saying, like augmenting more quality, better work, And I love the, mission as well of like, and to let us all go home at 5 and recharge from this context switching as well.
Yeah. And look, I just think one thing on safety, and again, like take this as like a big cross sample of organizations. A lot are still at that beginning stage where they're like rolling out AI licenses literally now, 3.5 years after it came on the scene. And that is really, really common. And why they haven't to date, why these organizations haven't to date is because they haven't, got their AI policy in place and their AI use policy and what's the strategy and so forth. But the bigger risk is that everyone's already using the tools. Like everyone is already using their personal version of ChatGPT and they're putting in work documents and they're probably putting in highly confidential, sensitive material into something that is not locked down. And I think that is a far bigger risk than going, oh, we haven't done it. We're not quite ready for the rollout. We don't want to do anything that's, risky. And it's like the risky thing is not giving your people a tool and being really clear about that, because I can absolutely guarantee you that the risks are really high if you're not doing that. We've seen it time and time again.
We just did so we obviously have this today is our HR industry benchmark, but we did an employee sentiment index report, which we do quarterly. And the last one was on AI use as well. And I think it was, not 100% sure this stat, but somewhere around 28 to 29% of ANZ employees are using a combination of approved and unapproved tools. So that's a third of employees doing it. So yeah, you're 100% right, Amantha. They're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I am conscious of time. I just wanted to ask one final question, then I think we can get to a couple of questions in the Q&A. So I guess if those who are attending today or if those who are listening to this after, if their organization is in the adoption without impact camp, what's the single most valuable thing? I feel like I already know the answer to this and it's metrics. What's the single most valuable thing they could do in the next 30 days?
Well, yes, metrics, but also like you got to move to leverage. Like, let's assume that you've got high AI adoption, you've trained people on how to be AI fluent, but you haven't made that next step into leverage. Like AI training is not just you tick that box. Like you might tick the box of presentation skills training or whatever, and then like nothing really changes in the world of presentation skills training, like, in 10, 20 years. But it does in AI. It's not a one and done, and you need to move on to helping people really leverage it and get those gains that we've all been promised, but not many of us are actually accessing.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it's been a big takeaway for me from the conversation, the literacy and the leverage. I think that's exactly right, and I think that's sort of as an HR team, we're starting to think about that exactly of like, okay, so we've got the literacy, or we presume some literacy. Let's pedal to the metal. Let's apply it to real live work cases, and let's put it in the mix and see what we learn, and make sure that it's kind of we've got a human in the loop. It's done responsibly. It's done in line with policy, et cetera. But like get onto it and learn and go from there.
Absolutely. I think I'll get to a couple of questions in the Q&A before we wrap up. I had a very nice comment from Paul. I think you guys should read. It's not really a question, but he just very resonates with the content. Alicia was asking, how do you think about implementing AI responsibly, and what does responsible AI mean to you? Anne, I might go to you for that one first.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think about the hallmarks of, yeah, policy in place, well understood, um, tool choice made clear, like here's the one we can use and here's the one that it's safe to put everything in. I think as well, definitely the kind of human in the loop element of like whenever there's a key decision to be made or impact to be had, that piece as well. Had a really fascinating conversation. We had some customer roadshows a while back. I've been thinking about this question and conversation. I think there's the broader corporate social responsibility piece of like environmental, which is, the data centers, et cetera, running lots of energy. I haven't quite cracked that one in terms of how do you ensure responsible footprint there. But it's kind of like continuing to think about it and think about all aspects. I think that's sort of how we're approaching it here, at least.
Mhm.
I would add one thing and just always, always, always think about what is the bias that is baked into your
Mm,
AI. It is
good
trained
show.
on all sorts of things, including the internet. Just as an exercise, don't do it now because obviously we're talking about monotasking today. But like, in 10 minutes when you sign off, just go into AI and type in create a photo of a lawyer.
Oh
And
God.
I can almost guarantee what you will get is you will get a man. He will be white. He will be probably in his 30s. He will probably have some books. He will probably have an American flag in the background.
Oh
He'll
God.
probably be pretty hot. And if you like do that a few more times, you might get some racial diversity. You probably won't get much more diversity than that. And that is just the clearest test of actually just bringing to life. Yeah, we all know the bias is baked in, but go do that and you'll see the bias in action. So just beware of bias in
Such a
anything
good
AI is giving
shout.
you.
Such a good shout. I'm getting like tears in my eyes thinking about running that query. Yeah. You're so
Also
right.
get it to create a photo of a nurse and you can probably guess what you
Oh,
would get. Mm.
Oh
okay.
gosh.
That's where the internet starts to get
The old internet,
messy.
eh?
Yeah. This one might be a bit of a, like a separate one, like almost like a separate session, I guess. There's lots of like great ideas in here, but from Greta, how can we create metrics that show quality outcomes rather than quantity? And how do we articulate that and measure quality? It's pretty, yeah, that's a big one. Amantha, any?
Mm. Look, what I can say is, for those of you that are running AI programs, like I can tell you how we think about this at Inventium. For most of our programs, we will do pre and post measurement. So the sorts of things that we're looking for, like, you obviously want people to feel more confident and proficient using AI. You want to know, how many hours has it saved them? How much more deep work are they doing? Keeping in mind also, you don't want people spending their whole week doing deep work. It's a good idea to ask, well, how has the quality of work that you're producing changed? And if they're a manager, how has the quality of work that you're receiving changed? I think like another good indicator is just breadth of use cases. Like if someone is just using AI to write their emails and that is the only use case, I would say that is very low value AI and it's probably the opposite of value because if that's all you're using it for, I could almost guarantee that your emails will be absolute slop. And so generally breadth of use cases is a bit of a proxy for you having some mastery with AI. They're just a handful of metrics that we often measure that help show us like a behavioral shift in the programs that we run.
Yeah, awesome. And did you want to add to that before well, I think we've got time for one more question.
No,
So
I think that's great. I've been taking copious notes. Yeah. This is great.
And by the way, I will add, I always use Granola AI as my note taking tool. So what it is for those that don't know, and
Oh,
please speak to your
yeah.
IT departments before installing new software. But what it is it's meeting note taking software, but it's not recording any audio or video. It's just taking a transcript. It's like having a really fast note taker. And so I have had this running for the whole webinar. So if anyone wants a transcript of this, just like hit me up again. Like I'm super easy to find on the internet. LinkedIn's probably easiest, and I'll also send that to you guys as well if you want to circulate that. So then you can run the transcript into AI, get a summary, do what you want with it.
It's so funny. I love it. I love it. Good shout. Yeah.
that is a good one. Yes, yeah, I can see it. I will ask you for that, Amantha, and we might send
Yeah,
it as a
I'll
resource
send it over.
for the participants today. Very quickly, final one. I'll go to Anne for this one first. Are there any other, this is from Grace. Are there any other mistakes you are seeing leaders make or things that make a surprisingly positive difference?
Yeah. I think it's back to what we were sharing before, Amantha was sharing before. There's some simple things of like not role modeling it themselves is just a kind of table stakes. And I'm very mindful of this as myself a leader of both. I think there's both like doing it and also talking about it and talking about like, oh,
Mm,
I wasn't so good at this piece of prompting. I got better here, or this was total slop, and this is how I rethought about it. So I think that's the basic thing that I'm seeing that it's
mm.
easy to overcome. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yeah, one thing I would add, aside from everything else that will be in the transcript, is talk about how you're using AI This should not be like a dirty little secret where and how you're using AI. The more we can talk about what role I played as a human and how I use the AI in doing things, like firstly, that's just good transparency and ethics. But secondly, it's learning. Like at Inventium, for example, in our Monday team meeting, we've got a standing agenda item that is how have you used AI in the last week? And it's a chance for us all to share, just like experiments that we've run, things that we've been playing around with. And I mean, given what we do in Inventium and Inventium AI, obviously we're using AI all the time. But it's just a chance for learning and experimentation as well. And I would encourage all teams to do that, to really normalize usage of AI, transparency around how you're using it, and just a culture of experimentation around what have you tried this week? What's worked?
I love
Yeah.
it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you both so much. That was a really, I mean, for me, I hope for everyone who logged on today, a really engaging and like interesting chat and just like got my mind and my cogs moving. So I hope it did for everyone else. So I really appreciate you both taking the time out. If everyone who's here today and is wondering, like, where does my, AI capability sit? What should I do next? We have built something to help answer that. So tomorrow we're going to receive this recording, hopefully the transcript as well, if I can get that from Amantha in time, with a link to a short 5-minute quiz that measures 2 dimensions of your AI capabilities. So the first is your readiness. How ready are you for AI, which is data, systems, governance, and leadership alignment. And then the second is effectiveness, which is the actual impact AI is delivering. And then your results are going to map you to one of 6 archetypes, which is benchmarked against this research that we've just done with the 1,200 HR professionals. So your results are going to reflect where you sit and then what to do next. So if you are interested in doing that, I encourage you to go have a go. It has some really great resources that we'll be sharing over the couple of weeks, including, Libby, a literacy fundamentals pack, which is in answer to your question. I was trying to type at the same time. So we'd love for you to do that. We'd also love if you could complete this survey. If I can just launch it and let us know how everyone felt about today, it always helps us improve and get better at our webinars. Amantha and Anne, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone else, for logging on and joining us. We loved it, and we hope to see you at our next one. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, team. See you all soon.